Nobody move, there's blood on the floor. And I can't find my heart. Where did it go? Did I leave it in the cold? So please give it back, cause it's not yours to take.
Thundercat is an American singer-songwriter and bassist. He grew up in parts of LA, including Compton. At 16, he joined the crossover thrash band Suicidal Tendencies. He released his first solo studio album in 2011, and his fifth was released this year, which is 2026. He collaborated with lots of people, including Gorillaz, Kendrick Lamar, Erykah Badu, and Spinal Tap. Hi, my name's Dan, and this is a review of the album Drunk by Thundercat. It was released in 2017. It was his third studio album, and it's my first time listening to it. And I would describe this as being experimental R&B, and it's got a certain wonkiness to it. And wonky was a word that was used for some music a few reviews ago. So it features guests, including Kenny Loggins, Michael McDonald, Kendrick Lamar, Pharrell, Kamasi Washington, and Flying Lotus, who I've reviewed albums by. One of them recently, that might have been the one that was wonky, can't remember. So this album is, I would say, difficult to categorize, which is why I'm leaning into this description of experimental R&B. So I think there's been a thing, I'm having this theory at the moment, that R&B is going through a process of a lot of experimentation going on, particularly using some quite modern production techniques in here, but also musically as well, in a similar way to the way that in the 50s and the 60s, jazz went through a lot of experimentation, I would think. And I would say that the R&B stuff hasn't been as long going and as influential yet, but time will tell. But I think this is a phenomenon that happens sometimes in genres, that things start to get serious and experimental. The core sound here is a bass. I think it's a 6-string bass. It's more strings than normal. And it's played mostly in an arpeggiated style. So it's a bit like it holds a chord and then goes, I'll see on the screen, of different patterns with his fingers here. So it's quite fast and it feels more guitar-like, but it's low and also medium range because you've got some higher strings in here. Then that's fed through various production effects, including at times this kind of watery self-detune thing that seems to be quite popular, certainly in more experimental R&B. And it's not a sound that I like, but I don't think it's overdone on this album, to my mind. And then we've got some programmed drums, mostly, that feel more awkward than groovy. They're kind of fairly sporadic. And then I think that's kind of the core of the sound, is this arpeggio bass and these bits of drums. And then other things, keyboard sounds mostly, I think. So sometimes there's real drums, sometimes there's synth bass. There is some variety in here. And then musically, it's unusual. So the chord sequences are unusual. The chords themselves tend to be fairly extended chords, which means so a very standard chord has 3 notes in it. Extended chords have 4, 5, 6 notes in it. And the chord sequences, as I say, are odd. It doesn't shift in the ways that you'd expect to. And it's hard to kind of say if there's a particular key that it's in at any point, because the chords seem to come from any possible key and just strung together. There are patterns of chord sequences, I think, but it's all quite unusual. There's also some odd time signatures and uneven length bars and things like that going on. The whole thing, therefore, has this kind of disjointed feel. Added to that, the tracks are quite short. Some have unusual structures and some don't end definitively. They just kind of stop at some point. His singing's kind of high and feels somewhat distant and disconnected. It's quite reverbery. It's quite processed. And the tunes are also, they fit with the chords, but they're also not what you think of the way tunes normally flow. So they're a little unusual. There is some rapping on some tracks by some of the guests, I believe, in here. So the songs are about a variety of things, and there's some quite interesting stuff in there. So there's including stuff about Japanese anime and culture and video games. There's quite a bit about drug and drink use and partying, and there's a few songs that mention God in various ways. There's a song called "The Friend Zone." You've probably heard that term. Is about this relationship phenomena being stuck in the friend zone. Um, so overall, I found it intriguing, but only mildly listenable. I wouldn't seek it out again. I didn't hate it, but it's not my kind of thing. And I think, as I seem to be finding with this experimental R&B stuff, is that its basis is R&B, and R&B is not really my home ground. It's not something that I feel comfortable and embrace a lot. And so when it becomes experimental, I think it leaves me behind somewhat in that I can kind of work out what's going on here. Technically, I think, but stylistically, it's not something I go, ooh, it's something I go, not sure about that. So, yeah, kind of fairly muted response from me on this. I appreciate that there are reasons why the experimental stuff finds its way onto this list, and there are maybe people out there who think that this is absolutely brilliant, and that's fine. I'm quite happy uh, to embrace the idea that some people will love it. Whatever it is you think of this album, though, I'd love to hear from you. If you can tell me through a comment, I'd really enjoy hearing from you. Well, that's it from me for now.